When I took Jack to the GP said to me, "You possibly have ADHD too." And I was like, what? I had no idea that adult ADHD existed.
It's dangerous to tell people as an adult that you have ADHD.
I reject the diagnosis, so I obviously think it's overdiagnosed.
If anything, really, there's a significant underdiagnosis.
The pattern of behaviour is to give you a daily low-dose amphetamine habit.
What the do they think we're going to do with some long-acting Ritalin?
I look at medication as a gift. It does for me something that nothing else can do. It makes me more normal.
Look at me.
Look, I made a dragon.
To start off, my name is Jack and I am 9.
Look at helping us, really appreciate it.
Oh God, you're adorable. And I love dogs.
We were doing okay, and then by the end of preschool, he was just climbing onto everything, on the go all the time, answering back.
Bedtime feels like torture.
It just became chaos.
It was fun, but you're getting a little bit worked up now.
You just want to fidget and do stuff, and really, the right thing to do would just be to sit there and listen.
One day he looked up at me and goes, "Mum, am I a good person?" I just knew something was wrong, and I basically turned up in year 3 and said to the teacher, "I think he's got ADHD, I'm going to get him checked."
ADHD, or Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, is the most commonly diagnosed mental disorder in Australian children, with up to 7% of kids thought to be affected. Symptoms include losing things or being easily distracted, often forgetful, and talking excessively. But even some doctors admit that ADHD is overdiagnosed. Medication dispensing rates in some parts of the country are 75 times higher than others.
Everybody dance now.
Everybody dance now. Do-do-do-do-do-do.
Kind of, yeah, that's good. I get it. That's good.
I was certainly sceptical that ADHD was a condition. I put it down to poor parenting and, single mums living on council estates in Britain.
When I took Jack to the GP and, got a referral, the GP had said to me at the same time, "Did you know that, if you had hyperactivity when you were younger, it's a high chance you've got ADHD now?" And I said, "You grow out of it." He goes, "Well, actually, no, they've actually found that adults have it as well. Maybe you should go and get screened." Jack was about 7 when he was diagnosed, and I was 47. Bit of a shock.
It was assumed that ADHD burnt out towards the end of adolescence. And it wasn't really until the 1990s that people started to look at, well, what happens to these children when they finish school? 60 to 80% of children and adolescents will go on to have symptoms of ADHD in adulthood.
The number of Australian adults prescribed government-subsidised ADHD medications rose by almost 50% between 2010 and 2014. But still, it's a far cry from the 3.5% or more than 650,000 Australians who are thought to be affected.
It's often getting missed. At least 90% of adults with ADHD are not being treated for their ADHD.
When I first started to really understand ADHD, it was like an epiphany. It was like, oh my God, this is why I've struggled like I have. Car accidents, financial problems, relationship problems, binge eating disorder. I just didn't have that ability to stop and think.
We know that people with ADHD are about 50% more likely to die through having an accident because of impulsivity. There is also evidence too that if you have ADHD, you've got an increased risk of suicide.
I was so scared when I realised Jack was now doing this, that he would have my old life. There was a time in my life where I just wanted it all to end. And I was so scared that would happen for him.
Sometimes I can be a little tough on myself, but I can always pull myself back up.
what you do is you take a belt, you slip it through a chair leg, up over your own leg, so that when you stand up without thinking, you have a physical reminder that you should be sitting down and to refocus your attention.
Donna taught herself this focusing technique after she was diagnosed with ADHD as a child.
I can definitely remember my mother telling me that we weren't going to use pharmaceuticals to treat me.
Donna was told she would grow out of it, but she continued to have problems, and in year 11, she dropped out of school completely.
Most of my 20s were punctuated by constant failure. I am very good at knowing when I'm about to be fired. It wasn't until I was 30 that I was re-diagnosed and I sought real treatment finally. I was initially prescribed dexamphetamine and it changed everything.
Adults with ADHD are generally prescribed one of two medications, dexamphetamine or methylphenidate, better known by its brand name, Ritalin. Both are psychostimulants.
If you compare dexamphetamine and Ritalin to speed or ice, they're related, but they're not nearly as powerful.
Here you go.
It's that time already.
I tried everything I could with Jack, everything. Like, who wants to medicate their child? It's the last thing you want to do. When Jack took the first tablet, he transformed in front of my eyes.
You can actually focus. It's magical stuff.
What medication's done for me is help me not be so impulsive. All of a sudden there was this pause. It was like I have a thought and there was a space before the action or before the words.
I noticed the difference very much between her taking her medication and her not. When Jack hasn't taken his medication, you know about it.
And I'm supposed to have my feet on it.
I'm probably putting it bluntly, if neither of them were on medication, I don't think the three of us would have a relationship.
I'm pretty sure our dog's got ADHD as well.
But not everyone agrees that adult ADHD is underdiagnosed.
I reject the diagnosis.
Dr. Martin Whiteley is an academic and former Western Australian politician, and he's a critic of what he calls the ADHD industry.
It's making behaviours that many of us exhibit on a daily basis and turning them into a psychiatric disorder that is concerning.
In psychiatry, we draw a line and we say, look, if you've got this degree of symptoms and it's having an impact on your life, you know, if you're really struggling, if you're having trouble working, if you're having trouble interacting socially, then you've got a condition that warrants treatment. And ADHD is really no different.
I want to get dexamphetamine or Ritalin, which are basically amphetamines.
Martin believes there's a connection between Western Australia's high prescribing rates of ADHD medication and the state's high rates of illicit amphetamine abuse.
For a significant minority of people, they'll either abuse the medications themselves, or some will actually on-sell or give their medications to friends and others.
There's been a lot of concern about stimulant medication being abused, but we've now got very good evidence, in fact, that treatment actually decreases risk of substance dependence and substance abuse.
There's research out of the States that shows that about 1 in 4 adults who seek a diagnosis of ADHD are doing it to get a source of stimulants.
When I see people like Martin Whiteley, I do have an emotional reaction. It actually really upsets me because if he stops one child from getting the help they need, he's destroying their life.
This sounds really extreme, but I don't want to live a life without the medication. Now I'm a full-time university student and I'm going to have a bachelor's degree. There's still doubt there, but for the first time in my whole life, there's also some hope.
I know what it's like to try to negotiate life with ADHD when you haven't got the support and treatment you need. I wouldn't wish that on anyone, and I certainly won't have that for my child.